when they would had the Eucharist, the priests that trained us would come up there, we'd ring the bell, and we'd hold the chalice, and the priest would pour the wine. We had to pour the wine, and the priest holding the chalice. And we'd never pour all of it. We save a little bit for when we, after the Mass, we go behind the altar, and we drink some of the wine, you know. So after that, my family moved down here because my dad came to a place called Celotex, and the Industrial Revolution was coming in now. You know, it wasn't just sugarcane and stuff. It was building products, sheetrock that you build houses, because a lot of people started coming there when that plant must have had about 1,000 people. You know, so my family moved, and a lot of family from my neighborhood moved from there to get a job for work. And so from there, we moved down here to what's called Marrero, is where I went to high school at. And during that time, again, you had black schools and white schools. The books I read, I'll never forget, maybe I might have been in like 5th grade, 6th grade. And you know, if you get a new book, you write your name in it. When we got the books, it had about 10 names, which means the book had to be at least 10, 15 years older than modern time. You know, so we had hand-me-down books. And I'll forget the woman, Caucasian woman, was teaching us. Her name was Miss Mary. She taught us Catholicism. That's what she would teach us, the catechism, you know, and but the rules and regulation. But I never really understood the symbolic symbols until, you know, I became Muslim, started studying the symbolism, you know. And I never forget that the priest would have the ashes and stuff, and stuff swinging and smelling the ash. Never knew what it was all about, you know. And what they would say, we were just moving. When they would stand up, we stood up. They kneel down, we kneel down. Because it was in Latin. We didn't know what they were saying, what they was doing, you know. So eventually, they changed it from Latin to English. All right, so it's said in English now. So basically, my mother was Baptist, and my mother said eventually she was Catholic. She was a tough old little lady. My mother lived to be 102 years old. She was a tough old woman, little lady. She was Catholic, but she said she didn't like the ideas of she got to sit in the back. Even at that time, that's how she felt. So she turned back to Baptist because her family, my uncle and they were preachers in the church. I stayed right next door to the church. Our house was next door to the church. We'd go to the church, listen to the spiritual and stuff like that. And again, we moved down here, and eventually I went to school called Lincoln High. And my wife we were teenage sweetheart. My wife was she was going into 10th grade. I got married at an early age. I was like going on 19. My wife was going on 17. I married at a very early age. That's how I left school at 10th grade. And but we eventually, as we began to change and learn more, better, we started doing better. When I was in the Catholic Church and moved to Marrero, my wife and I was part of a pilot program. My children were the first children that integrated the Catholic Church on the West Bank, because my wife and I, we were active in the church at that time. I became an usher in that church. And this is when the priest was named Father Apollo, and they was they got orders from the headquarters that since integration was coming, but they was following Dr. King and the movement. They didn't try to bring about the changes until they followed the civil rights movement, and they saw what changes was about to come, so they decided that they were going to start changing. And that's how my children came in the school. The first children integrated that school. And we had a convention, I never forget, it was in Edgewater Beach Hotel. It was in, I think, it was in Mississippi. I think Biloxi, Mississippi. And we stayed at Edgewater Beach Hotel. and it was a regional conference. People was coming from all over the state and etc. When me and my wife came in with Father Rapolo and some of the nuns, they told him that we couldn't come. The place, no blacks can come in there. So Father Rapolo got with the regional director and told him that they met and they said, if we can't come in a hotel, we're going to change and go negotiate with somebody else that would allow us to go into the hotel. And what happened? What they did? They agreed with him and they allowed us to integrate that hotel called Edgewater Beach Hotel. It was destroyed during Hurricane Betsy, that hotel. But we were the first black people. The cooks and etc. They looked at us and said, yeah, we never had one of us in sleeping in one of them beds. I said, watch yourself. So eventually, that's all that's tied into how we were involved in the civil rights movement. And they was using us as spokespeople to talk to the other, what we call black people at that time, African American. And again, as I told you earlier, that's tying into, there was a big fight at that church. There was a young man came out from the military, and he went and sat in the first seat in the church. We were way in the back. We had never seen it before. And the ushers went up there and they told him, he can't sit there. He said, I just came from fighting on the front line. I was on the front line. I was first then, and I'm going to come sit. I fought for this freedom to sit on the front seat. And the ushers and all came and they started talking, and a big fight broke out. I mean, it was in every magazine. It was national. They started fighting and etc. And I'll never forget a man named Dumas. He gave me a key to his car, told me, go get my tire wrench for me out of my trunk of my car. I mean, got his tire wrench, and boy, I mean, black and white was fighting. A guy named Lionel Jackson, I don't remember Lionel Jackson, tall brother. He joined the nation. After that, big fight. After I joined the nation, I connected with him. He joined the nation with me. And I guess eventually, you know, from this point on, we became Muslim tied into the global Orthodox now, you know. So
proper Islam.
Yeah, proper Islam. So I married my wife. We've been married now. We'll be 63 years in August, and we had 7 children. And again, our children, we homeschool our children, and then went to what's called the Islam school, and etc. And
when your wife raised on a plantation,
on a plantation. She was raised on a Sealy plantation, where her family did sharecropping and etc. You know, and her uncles wanted to start a union. Somebody came out there and influenced them. They wanted to start a union, and the white man was. The word got out that they was going to kill one of them. So what happened? Her family, that under the darkness of night, left that night and they moved to a place called Thibodeau or Houma or something like that. And that's how she moved. That's how she would move from out of the country, because our family, white people, was after her family. And thank God they ran her down here. I got a chance to marry her. What happened? Yeah. So I stayed at that store, National Food Store. When I left, they was training me to be a superintendent, to run one of the stores. Like I said, they allowed me to go to college because I became radical then. You know, demanding this and demanding that, and because of the explosion of America, they was afraid. They didn't want to lose their customers and stuff too. I told them I might be give them the CP we got to picket this store. Because I became more radical then, you know. I never forget at nighttime.